Good evening, everyone. My name is Monica Yui La Rosa, and I'm here to give you a presentation on the effect of cesarean sections on postpartum depression. Now, most of you know what a cesarean section is. It is the surgical means to deliver a baby. And there are times when C-sections are absolutely medically necessary, and as a matter of fact, they can be life-saving for both mother and child. However, it has been linked to postpartum depression, and because it is so, I think it merits taking a little bit closer look as to what the effects of C-sections are on postpartum depression. You might be asking yourself why. Why do we have to take a closer look at this one particular subject? And the reason is the cesarean section rates in the United States are on the rise. Where they used to be 4.5% in 1965, now they are as high as 29%. However, some states, such as Florida, for example, have even higher rates of cesarean sections. As a matter of fact, in certain hospitals in Florida, cesarean sections are escalating at an epidemic rate as high as 40%. And there's lots of different theories as to why this is. Some people are thinking it could be because of maternal age, advanced maternal age, and therefore more of these women require C-sections. However, most people are leaning towards the belief that because the hospitals are afraid of lawsuits, they are actually encouraging women and encouraging the doctors to perform cesarean sections instead of allowing the woman to deliver a baby vaginally. Now, the biggest complication with that, like I said earlier, is that there is a link between postpartum depression and cesarean sections. And to make matters worse, it doesn't just stop at the mother. It doesn't just affect her mental health. It also goes on to affect the baby. One study in particular has found that postpartum depression was actually linked with poor infant cognitive performance. So because of these reasons, we have to take a better look at it and try to figure out what the correlation is, where it's coming from, it, get it to the root of the problem. So we're going to take a look at information briefly from 3 different studies that basically support this theory. The first was a really interesting study. It actually dealt with MRIs, and what they did is that these researchers found out that there's different chemical changes and chemical balances that can be seen basically in the brain of a mother after she delivers that can be picked up by an MRI. And a good example of this, for example, would be oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone, sometimes referred to as the love hormone or as the maternal hormone, that is usually released by the pituitary gland after a mother delivers a baby. Now, researchers have actually found that most of the time the woman only releases this hormone when she delivers vaginally. And it's thought that it's because of the uterine contractions and because of the stimulation of the cervix and the vagina as the mother is delivering that the oxytocin is released. But the reason I mention this is because cesarean deliveries, mothers who go through cesarean deliveries, don't derive the oxytocin benefits. They are basically deprived from the oxytocin. And that leads to all sorts of other problems, such as problems with maternal-infant bonding. As a matter of fact, when these researchers did MRIs on the brains of mothers who delivered vaginally versus mothers who delivered through cesarean, they found that the mothers who had delivered vaginally were actually much more responsive to their baby's cries, their own baby's cries, than women who had delivered through cesarean. So that shows that there's a little bit of a disconnect there. As a matter of fact, the MRIs were done, I believe, it was 6 weeks postpartum. So we're talking in the early postpartum period, but still a very important period for bonding, between mother and child. And the mother's already under undue stress from a delivery as it is, whether it's vaginal or cesarean. And this seems to be adding an extra strain. It seems to be creating some sort of barrier between the bonding of mother and child. So that was a really interesting find. The next study was the COO study that was conducted in 2003. And basically what they did is that they took data that they already had basically compilated from another study. They put it all together. And when they looked at it, they realized that women who experienced cesarean sections were actually twice as likely to develop postpartum depression. So that's quite a significant difference. I mean, I'm not going to, in my opinion, I wouldn't say that it's a statistically significant difference. That's much more so, because I believe the rate was 1.8. So it shows that there's definitely something going on there. There's definitely something going on that leads to this postpartum depression, whether it's a change in hormones or whether it's recovery, we're not sure, but there's definitely a correlation. And the last study that we're going to take a look at is the Edwards study. And basically this was same thing, a study that was conducted using a survey that these women took. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was 6 weeks after delivery. These women went ahead and they took this survey, and once again they found that there was a statistically significant difference between the women that had delivered through cesarean versus the women that had delivered through vaginal delivery. So basically, in conclusion, from the studies that I looked at, there definitely seems to be a strong correlation, a strong significance to whether you deliver through cesarean or whether you deliver vaginally, and the incidence of postpartum depression. And obviously this is something that we have to look at very closely, especially with cesarean sections, like I said, increasing at the rate at which they are. If there is indeed a significant effect that cesarean sections have on postpartum depression, then the medical community, the rest of the medical community, such as the hospitals, the doctors that deliver these babies, they need to be aware of what's going on. They need to be made aware that cesarean sections should only be basically performed when it's absolutely medically necessary, and when it's not, obviously, alternative methods should be looked at. Basically, the line of thinking goes like this: if cesarean sections basically lead to an increase in postpartum depression, then it could only stand to reason that a decrease in cesarean sections would lead to a decrease in incidence of postpartum depression, and therefore would increase maternal well-being after the delivery of the baby, as well as the bonding between mother and child. So this is an area that warrants further research, and I think that in the meantime, doctors, psychologists, they need to keep an eye on this sort of thing to make sure that the mother is counseled properly. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you very much.